This is a variation of the classic hoop called a C-hoop earring. As you can see, it is because it's left open, and I'm going to be adding a fun wrapped bead to the front of the earring. The tools that we will be needing include a ring mandrel in a size 10, which is 3/4 of an inch wide. We have a file to smooth down the ends of our wire, as well as a ruler to measure out the length of our wire. The wire we are going to be using is a copper wire in 20 gauge, and this is in a rose gold plated color. And then we have 2 beads of a medium size, and these are just a pretty blue crystal that I found in my stash. And our tools. I forgot to lay these out, but we also will be using a pair of flat nose pliers along with the nylon jaw pliers. And then we will also be needing our wire cutters and a pair of needle nose pliers. To begin making our C-hoop earrings, we are going to measure out 3 inches of wire and cut it to length. So first off, of course, we are going to take the nylon jaw pliers and straighten out the wire to make sure it is all smooth with no kinks. Now we can measure our wire on the ruler, but first, as you can see, we've got a bit of a curve in our wire here, so we want to straighten that out so that our measurement is more precise, and we're going to hold it at 3 inches, pinching it tightly with our fingers and then cutting it with the wire cutters. Now we will smooth down both ends with the file. Next up, we will be wrapping the bead, attaching it onto the wire. You can place it on a head pin and wrap it that way, or as I will be doing and showing you here, I'm going to be making my own head pin, which is super simple to do. First, I'm going to place the bead onto the wire and then slide it on down past out of the way, where I'm going to create a small bend in the very tip of the wire, and I'm making this at the very tip of my needle nose pliers to make a bend that is as small as possible, twisting the wire to create a U shape, which I will then pinch closed. Now that we have created the head on our pin, we can bring the bead back up so that we can create a loop at the top of the head pin. And now we can create the loop on the head pin, and to do that we are going to place the pliers on the wire, making sure that the bead is pressed all the way against the head pin, and then holding the wire about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch down into our pliers, we are going to bend that wire over to create a right angle. Once we have made the bend in the wire, we can now begin creating the loop by holding the pliers on the wire and wrapping the long end of the wire all the way around the pliers. And then readjusting the grip of my pliers, I'm going to take that long end of the wire and wrap it around, filling up the space between the bead and the loop where our pliers were when we created that right angle. So we will wrap that long end of the wire down around towards the bead, and once we come to the bead, we will wrap the wire around 1 or 2 more times so that the base of that wire wrap is wider than the top. Once we have finished wrapping the wire, we are going to take the wire cutters and cut off the excess wire. And then, picking up our needle nose pliers again, we will pinch down that end of the wire so that it is tight all around against itself on top of the bead. And then also we want to take the file and file down that end that we cut off so that it is smooth and won't catch on anything, and unwrap the wire. Now we have our bead made into a charm, and we can take our wire and create the hoop itself. Placing the wire on the ruler, we are going to measure to 2 1/4 inches, and then we're going to hold the wire at that point, marking 2 1/4 inches, and we will use the needle nose pliers and create a right angle in the wire. Once we have created the right angle in the wire, we're going to put it back into the needle nose pliers, and 1/4 inch from the tip, we are going to wrap that short end down around the long end of the wire. Once we have bent that short end down, we are going to wrap it around the long end of the wire, but before we do that, we want to add our charm onto the wire so that it is wrapped onto the earring itself and cannot come off. Now that we have added our bead to the loop, we are going to place our pliers into that loop at the tip and hold them flat against that short end of the wire. And we're going to wrap that short end of the wire up the long end of the wire away from the bead. Wrapping it as far as I can go with my fingers, I am then going to take the needle nose pliers and tighten that spiral together. Then I'm going to be using the flat nose pliers to finish tightening the short end of the wire against the long end until it is flat against that long end of the wire. If you feel like it would work better, you could also use the nylon jaw pliers at this point instead of the flat nose pliers. Alright, before we bend that long end of the wire into the hoop shape, I want to show you that there are two different ways to wrap it. The first way to wrap it is to just continue in the same direction that you wrapped the loop, as I did with this rose gold pair. You can see that when looking straight onto the earring, you can't see the loop from which the bead is hanging. The other option is to wrap the hoop of the wire to the side of the loop. So as you can see, when you look straight onto this earring, you can see the loop from which the bead is hanging. Once you have decided which way you want your hoop to be in relation to the loop where the bead is hanging from, you will simply place it onto the ring mandrel and then gently bend the wire around the ring mandrel tightly to give it its circular shape. Once you have bent that wire into the circular shape, repeat all these steps for your second earring, and you have completed your very own set of C-hoop earrings. Thanks for watching. Please let me know in the reviews if you liked this video, and I'll see you in the next class.